I am feeling welcomed everywhere I've been in Amarillo. I've been feeling welcome, so thank you for your hospitality. In fact, I've got some friends here. Many of you may know the Watsons, and so I was there at their house feeling at home, and they invited some friends of theirs over. And so we were having a good chat, and why are you here, Brian? And I got the question, what is your testimony? And what's your story of how you came to believe in Christ, how you came to believe in the Bible, and how you came to believe in creation? And in the process of telling that story, I realized my story really generates the motivation for what I do. So I thought I'd try to tell you the nutshell version of what happened in my life so that you know what's going on inside my brain and why I'm here before you today. I wasn't always believing this. I used to believe that I evolved from an ape and that ape evolved from a fish, because that's all I had ever been told. That's all I was taught. And so I believed in evolution. I believed in millions of years. I believed that science supported all that. And that was me. And one day I was in college, and I came to the Lord. And I was discipled, and we were, the guy discipling me in the Lord in college, I was at Stephen F. Austin State University there in Nacogdoches, Texas, where the trees are tall. Unlike here, man, no kidding. We drove just on the way here tonight. We drove past a truck that said tree service, and it was riding on the shoulder of the road with smoke coming out the back. And I thought, well, there's no trees for any business. No wonder he can't afford to replace his pickup truck. Why do we have tree business in Amarillo? I don't know. But over there in Nacogdoches, you definitely need tree people. So anyway, I don't know why I got off on that, but I missed the tall trees, I guess. But we're in there amongst the beautiful pines, and he is teaching me how to witness, how to share your faith. I didn't know. I was a Christian, but I believed in evolution. But I believed in Jesus, but not Genesis. I think that describes a lot of people I've met. That was me. And one day we were out in front of a place where a guy came around listening to the guy, Kurt, who's discipling me, talk to a lady, and he's telling her, are you a Christian? Do you know what it's like to be a Christian? Do you know what it means to come to Christ? He's asking her spiritual questions. And she's saying, oh yeah, that's like totally cool, like whatever, just go away, Wasn't going real far. And this passerby listens in on this conversation, stops, and says, hey man, I hear you talking to her about the Bible. Did you know the Bible's totally wrong? The Bible's been disproven by science. That's what he said. And because he's a college student, he must have been right, because teenagers know everything. So Kurt turns his attention to this brash passerby and says, what science has disproven the Bible? And he said this, fossils, man. Fossils are millions of years old, and they disprove the Bible because there's no fossils and there's no millions of years in the Bible. Ha, gotcha. It was that kind of an attitude. I mean, he didn't say the last part. I'm embellishing because I can. But, ha. And I'm sitting back. I'm sort of standing in the shadows because that's what I like to do, just shadow man. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy has a point. He's got a point. What is Kurt going to do? He's been trapped by this brash teenager. And then Kurt turns to the guy again and says, how do you know that they know the ages of those fossils, that they're millions of years old? And he goes, scientists, man. Like, duh. Scientists do. Well, what science do the scientists do to determine the age of these fossils? Scientists, man, scientists. He thought he was done. And then Kurt said this, and this totally changed my life. He said, did you know that scientists assign an age to a rock layer based on the age that they assume that the fossils lived and were evolving millions of years ago? And then they turn around and they assign an age to the fossil based on the geologist's age assignment for the rock layer in which the fossil's found. And did you know that that's circular reasoning? And I was sitting there standing in the shadows thinking, circular reasoning? Is that bad? It doesn't sound very good. And so we went back to Kurt's apartment afterwards, and he said, hey, Brian, what do you think about that conversation we had about the circular reasoning and how they date the fossils? And he asked me personally, he said, can you refute that? Because I believe, he said, do you believe that the fossils are millions of years old? I said, yeah. I mean, it's science, man. It's science. and he said, but what do you think about the circular reasoning? And I said, well, I can't really refute that. He said, well, I'm open. If you can refute me, I want to learn. So show me, Brian. Show me the truth, oh great science, Brian, because I was like a biology major, and I was a teenager, so I knew everything too. And boy, he just kept on it, and for 6 times 6 weeks, he kept asking me that same question until he bothered me, and I got upset. And I said, stop asking me about the millions of years age assignment and the circular reasoning for the fossils. I'm tired of you asking me this question. Just stop it. And he said, you know what? I want to challenge you on it, though, because it's not in the Bible, and I don't think it's a good science. And you haven't refuted my assertion that it's circular reasoning. So I'll tell you what, Brian, I will back off if you'll read this book on creation. Oh, no, creation book. I mean, to me, back then, creation meant junk science or quack science. And so I thought, you know what? I think I will take him up on this because I'm a teenager. I know everything. I'm going to open up this junk science, quack science book, and I did. I remember sitting in my dorm, opening that book with a yellow pad and a pen in hand, and I was going to write down all the errors in this dumb creation dummy book. And I got through page 1, and I thought, well, there's no errors yet. And I got to page 2, and I thought, no one's ever talked like this before. And I got to page 3, and it was talking about, is this a world of chaos or a cosmos, an orderly cosmos? And I thought, well, I guess it is kind of orderly. I mean, we do have galaxies that's ordered instead of just random particles floating everywhere. We have order. We have organization in living things. We have organization all over the place. This is an ordered world. I guess creation does have some kind of merit. And then I got to the last page 5 months later because I had to study in between. And I'm telling you, after 5 months, my page was blank. I could not refute a single thing. And I went back to Kurt in his apartment, and he said, well, what did you think of that book? And I said, it's awesome. Creation is true. Science that I never heard, I finally now get to see. I remember one of the things I read in that book was about this bird that we have a replica of in the lobby here called Archaeopteryx. We are going to say some dinosaur names tonight, and let's go ahead and say our first name. It's a bird name, Archaeopteryx. Okay, that was mediocre, but we're getting started. And my professor was a biology professor, and he took it upon himself to make sure that the dumb Bible-believing students that went through his zoology class learned that the Bible was not to be trusted. And the way he did that was by putting up pictures of Archaeopteryx. And he said, this is a bird-like creature, but it's also a reptile-like creature. So it's a reptile half bird. It's proof of evolution. It's a missing link. It's something in between these two different kinds. Now, in this book that I was reading, the creation book, it quoted from paleontologists who had seen the Archaeopteryx fossil with their own eyes, touched it and felt it themselves. They were evolutionists, and here's what they said about Archaeopteryx. This is not a missing link. This is just a bird. And I thought, oh, my professor didn't tell me this side of the story. So that's when I realized the icons that I had thought propped up evolution, improved evolution in my mind, it's just a bird. It's not evolution, it's just an extinct bird. That's not evolution. And with that, I thought I would bring to you 5 dinosaur details. These details are basically what I've put together over the years of studying origins, Genesis, and dinosaurs. These are the details that I wished I had known way back then, so that I didn't spend so many years being confused about where I came from. Guys, I thought I came from a fish. How do you think that changed the way I behaved? I thought I came from an ape, so no wonder I acted like a fool, like an ape, Anyway, I won't go there, but praise God that he revealed the truth to me, and he had a friend challenge me with a question and challenge me persistently. I hope that you'll do that someday with a knowledgeable question. Maybe you'll use some of the information you find in tonight's presentation. Maybe you'll use one of these details to challenge a friend of yours who you love, and you want to see him come to this realization. And this is the bottom line of what happened to me. Before I was able to trust Genesis, I was a Christian who believed in evolution. And then after I saw the kinds of details like I'm about to show you tonight, I became a Christian who believes not in evolution, but in Genesis. Genesis as history. And so ever since then, my view of God himself elevated. And now I know a God who is able to accurately write exactly where I came from. I came from Adam, not apes. He's able to describe the origin of the world exactly the way it happened. And I can trust what he said about history of creation. Therefore, I can trust what he says about everything else in his book. So he's a God who's able to put his word, make it readable, make it studyable. I know that's not a word, but I'm using it. And this is a God who is worth all of our worship. He's worth our time, energy, and everything. And that's what comes from these 5 dinosaur details. So the first detail has to do with clever design. The reason I want to mention this is because I have talked to Christians who look at me with a straight face and say, I believe that dinosaurs were created by Satan. Now, you may be in here, so I don't want to offend you, but you're wrong. Satan doesn't create anything but a mess. All he can do is mar that which has been created. He doesn't make dinosaurs. And there are too many details of design that show to us that these dinosaurs were cleverly crafted, not put together by a hodgepodge, not created by nature, natural processes, not created by Satan, but by God. And so some of the clever design features we see in sauropod dinosaurs, I'm going to race through these because I want to show you some design features in the dinosaurs behind me, since we have those here with us tonight. But this is a sauropod, Diplodocus at the Denver Museum, and it's got these arch-shaped hips. Do you see it? The hip bone, highest point in its body, arch-shaped. And when I see that, it reminds me of these arches that form Roman aqueducts. This is built 2,000 years ago, still standing today because it was built so well. So arches with pillars below them, like these dinosaur legs were pillars that came up to these arches to support all that dinosaur weight. How much weight? 30 tons? You build something that's 30 tons and walks around. That's not easy. And build something with a long neck, like a boom. So actually, scientists who study sauropod necks compare them to cranes. And they actually have tendons that run through the bones of the neck, and parallel tendons, 2 of them, side by side. Why? Well, in a crane, we have 2 guide wires so that the crane doesn't wobble side to side as it's lifting up heavy items. So he's got to keep that head lifted up, and it doesn't wobble side to side because he has 2 parallel tendons that run along the top of his neck. He also has lightweight, tiny head to save weight, and lots of spaces and gaps and holes. I was at the Chicago Field Museum, and they talked about this very design feature, and the way they put it, this is evolutionists were putting this out. So I thought, man, I've got to take a picture of this placard in this museum because it says openly that sauropods were engineered. I want to ask them, who engineered it? If it's engineered, who was the engineer? And I bet you a $100 bill, they would say nature engineered it. Nature did it. Oh, okay, yeah, like wind and waves and erosion and predators, that's what built it. That's the story they're telling us. It's a silly story. Whenever we see parts of a system that are the right size, shape, and strength that fit together and work together for a purpose, every single time we see that, it always has come about through an actual personal engineer. Not nature, not Satan, but an able and intelligent. And this is what Romans 1 says, that Invisible qualities of God will be made known through that which he has made. These scientists are looking at the evidence for creation, and they're admitting, hey, it was engineered to be big by having lightweight vertebrae. But they misidentify who is doing that engineering. We have engineering in these brachiosaurs. Say brachiosaur. Getting better, okay. Brachiosaurs had these neck ribs, cervical ribs. They acted like leaf springs, this guy here in the bottom of your car, to keep your wheels from bouncing like the wagons did in the Old West. So instead, the sauropod, instead of stepping and going wiggle, 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 so he couldn't even grab the leaf with his wobbly face, instead he would take a step and rigid, stable, just because of the design of those ribs that were perfectly sized and shaped to dampen the wobble wiggle. And then we have an egg. I mean, an egg is amazing. There's a real egg over on this table if you want to come see it after I'm done. And it's a hadrosaur egg here. I'm holding a different hadrosaur egg. And I was listening to Dr. Galuza give tours this afternoon, and he came to that egg, and he told the group, think about this egg, class. This is goop inside of this egg, or was. The goop turned itself into a dinosaur. It actually crafted itself into a dinosaur. Think about what happens in a chicken egg. Same thing, except it turns itself into a chicken. I mean, can you imagine? Hand me a pile of goop that fits in my hand and turns itself into a laptop computer. That's the level of engineering of our God. And not just a laptop computer or a dinosaur, but one that could heal itself, repair itself. Wouldn't that be great? Oh, I dropped my laptop. Just wait a month, it'll get better. It doesn't happen. So we have a whole new level of engineering that lets us know for sure that God is the incredible designer. Okay, so there's a few design features behind me that we didn't talk about in the tours. For example, this one's called Triceratops, so say that. Triceratops. He's got this big head frill. Well, the big head frill connects to his big, thick jaw through this mechanism right here. And his jaw was really thick, and his teeth were thick. He had the most complicated teeth of any animal, had 5 different layers of material to make it strong. And these teeth were shaped just like scissors, so that as he clamped his jaw, it would slice through any kind of vegetation. I bet he ate wood, and he was like, this is fine, I can get down with this, because he had such thick jaws. But the point being, everything was in place. The thickness of the jaw, the density and strength of the teeth, the big muscle that he closed his mouth with, and the large frill that gave him the leverage to be able to chomp that much. It all works together. It all worked together in the Triceratops. And there's just an endless sea of information that you could examine for yourself to know for sure that these creatures were created cleverly designed. And it's what we expect to see if Genesis 1:25 is true. It says, and God made the beasts of the earth. Guys, I think dinosaurs qualify as beasts of the earth. I mean, they're pretty beastie. God made, not Satan made, not nature made. And we see the evidence of that design. Clever design. So let's go to the second dinosaur detail. So God made them at creation. Made them at creation, but how did they turn into fossils? And I think this has to do with catastrophic death. Catastrophic death of dinosaurs and other creatures. Here's a dinosaur that died, I think, catastrophically. The secular scientists who studied this particular fossil of a Camarasaurus, say it? They agree with me because they examined its neck. They said, wow, this neck is really bent pretty sharply right there. Let's examine the details of these vertebrae, and here's what they concluded. The postmortem dorsiflexion disarticulated the zygapophyses such that it was preserved in a pose that was unlikely attainable in life. Sorry, I read that a little fast. I first read that, and I was like, duh, everybody knows that. Postmortem dorsiflexion. So postmortem means after he died, dorsiflexion is this, and so that pose is unlikely attainable in life. In other words, this guy was buried in mud, and the force of the mud broke his neck. That's what it means. So he got his neck broke. Ouch. So this is not like a calm, peaceful, everyday scene where it just dies of old age. No, no, no. This is abnormal. It's abnormal to have any fossil. You have to have it buried rapidly and buried deeply to make any kind of fossil. That's not the story these guys tell in the National Geographic book on dinosaurs for families. By the way, we have the perfect antidote to this book called the Guide to Dinosaurs, and we have it here tonight. Here's what they say about the Compsognathus. Say it. Come on, wake up. No, I didn't say repeat it. I just said wake up. Turkey-sized dinosaur. And so if you saw Jurassic Park 3, these are the ones that climb all over the guy and eat him, and it's a really creepy scene. Turkey-sized dinosaurs. These Compsognathus dinosaurs, luckily for scientists, who know everything because we were there, we saw it all happen. That's what I want to say sometimes is, how do you know? Were you there? And they're telling these stories. Luckily for scientists, Compsognathus lived close to the shore of a calm lake. Calm lake. And after he died, I guess of old age, the animal's body sank peacefully and gracefully to the bottom of the lake, and the calm waters ensured that the bones were not broken up before the process of fossilization, no doubt it has to take millions of years, could begin. Have you ever examined the bottom of a calm lake? I have. I remember canoeing in Alabama when I was in college. And I would stick the canoe paddle down into the soft sediment at the bottom of a calm lake, and I would steer it around, and these sulfurous fumes would bubble up, and they would reach the guy's nose right about the time the canoe traveled past. And he'd, stop it, man, stop it. What's the matter? I don't smell anything. Oh, it stunk so bad. Why was it stinky in there? It was stinky because anything that was like algae or dead frogs or dead fish, they were decomposing. No fossils are forming in the bottom of a lake. Fossils aren't forming in the bottom of the ocean either. It's just mud. Even a whale, a 90-foot-long whale, gets completely recycled within months. No fossils are forming. So this is a silly story. And then I began to think, does this story make sense? Does it jive with the Compsognathus type fossils that I've seen? So I looked up some Compsognathus fossils, and here's one from Europe, and here's one from China. And so I thought to myself, well, I guess that does make sense. I mean, after all, calm waters took its head and smashed it against its pelvis. That's what happens all the time. No, maybe not. This was not calm. This was catastrophic death. Here's a running bird, like a roadrunner type bird. It's an extinct Caudipteryx. Say it. Bird. And even him, neck arched back. Every time we see these animals with their neck arched back, it's a posture consistent with an experiment that was done where researchers, and they get paid to do these kinds of experiments, it's funny. They took chickens and put them in a big bucket, and then they filled the bucket with mud, and then they waited 5 days or so, and then they pulled the mud out, and they looked at the chickens. And guess what posture those chickens were in? They were a bunch of dead chickens, okay, and necks arched back. They choked on the mud. And we see a lot of mud, and a lot of dead creatures buried in rock layers laid down by water, mud. And we find these all over the world. I saw this one at the museum in Bozeman, Museum of the Rockies. And I saw the placard, it says, an agonizing death. I thought, yes, they get it, they're getting it. He died in agony, not like normal everyday position. And then I looked at the finding, and of course he's got his neck arched back like he's choking. And I read the placard and it said, this dinosaur is probably choking. And I thought, yes, he was choking. And then it said, most likely because a predatory dinosaur was clamping its neck with its jaw. What? Where's the predator? I just see a dinosaur choking. There's no predator choking it. He's choking on mud. But if we admit that, then we have to admit that there's a lot of death all over the world from a giant, watery, muddy cataclysm that covered the globe. That's what we see. I look at the T-Rex nicknamed Sue, named after the discoverer, Sue Hendrickson. And this is at the Field Museum in Chicago, and the image on the top left shows Sue restored to lifelike frame. And then the image on the bottom right shows Sue's actual head in a glass case so that we could honor and observe Sue. Now, the people that you see through the other side of the glass, they are looking at this placard that I'm about to show you. And it details something unique. There's a difference between these two skulls. Do you notice the difference in the shape of the nose? Yeah, so this one has a dent in its nose. So we want to observe that and have an explanation for that. Crushed nose. Oh, good, we get an explanation. Here it is. Approved by scientists. When Sue was found, her pelvis was resting on top of her snout. Okay? Though it may sound odd, discovering a theropod dinosaur in this death pose is surprisingly common. I think it's only surprising if you don't have a watery catastrophe on your mind. This pose, get this, I read this pose may be caused by muscle spasms. And I read that, and I'm laughing out loud, and everyone's staring at me because they're just looking at it going, yes. They're reading it going, muscle spasms. It must be muscle spasms, because that's what the placard says. And I'm going, muscle spasms? Are you kidding me? Yeah, every time I have a muscle spasm, it takes my nose and smashes it against my pelvis and mashes my nose. That's what happens, muscle spasms. Give me a break. And so I took a picture, and I texted it to my daughters, and they're like, Dad, what are you talking about? This is crazy. That's how that goes. So I went to the museum in Hill City, South Dakota. I went to these different museums, and I'm looking at T-Rex, and he's like 6 tons. You know, he can go anywhere he wants to go. And yes, I get paid to do this. And I'm thinking, how does this happen? A giant, strong land animal or swamp animal, and he gets covered with mud moving faster than he can run. Otherwise, he would just run out of the way. Covered so deeply in mud that he can't climb his way out. So the covering was stronger than him. This was a horrible, terrible, muddy catastrophe, and it's worldwide because these dinosaurs and other fossils are found on every single continent, even Antarctica. Guess what we learn from the Bible? There was a worldwide flood, and it brought sea creatures. By the way, we have sea creatures and seashells and even air creatures, sky creatures, all mixed together, buried with the dinosaurs. And I think every single layer, at least almost every layer that we find dinosaurs in, it has a mixture of different creatures from different environments, as though the flood of Noah's day actually happened. This is what I would expect to see. Billions of dead things buried in rock layers that were laid down by water and all over the earth, because it says in Genesis 7, and the waters prevailed exceedingly on the earth. Not just a little part of earth, not just the Middle East, because then why did Noah take the birds on the ark? God could have had them migrate. All the high hills, not just most or some, under the whole heaven were totally covered. Now we look at that and we think, well, there's not enough water to cover the Himalayas. Those are miles high. Okay, read the text. This is a document written by eyewitnesses. They're living through this. They're recording their events. It says all the high hills that we knew of, the pre-flood world, those high hills that used to exist before the whole world was overturned by this flood. And all flesh died that moved on the earth. Dinosaur flesh died. Bird flesh died. Pterosaurs, turtles. We have dinosaurs mixed with animals that look just like squirrels, just like Tasmanian devils, just like frogs. Plants that look just like roses, just like, they were the same creatures and plants and animals that we have today, buried in these rock layers. Those that were brought on board the ark were preserved through that flood. And so, yeah, I think dinosaurs are on the ark. It says in the text in Genesis 7 that any creature that walked on land, hey, did they have legs? Yeah, any creature with the breath of life in its nostrils was on the ark. I think these were on the ark. Then they lived a little bit after the flood. until the Ice Age climate change took away their habitats, and other factors probably contributed to their extinction after the flood. And during that time, I think we had these clashes with dragons. And when I say dragons, I don't mean like the TV show Jane and the Dragon with the big fat plump dragon and it's got the teeny tiny wings, like hoo. That's not what I'm talking about, silly dragon. I'm talking about the accounts that our ancestors, especially those in Europe, used the word dragon. They talked about the dragon in their historical records as though it was a real creature. You know, let's give them some benefit of the doubt before just completely dismissing them as buffoons, since they were the eyewitnesses and we were not. They describe anatomy that matches, possibly, you be the judge, some kind of sauropods, some kind of theropods that we know from fossils. For example, we see on this Chinese zodiac representations of various animals. They have a Chinese calendar in their system, and they've got the year of the rooster, the year of the, what are these animals? The year of the tiger. Ooh, that would be nice to be born in the year of the tiger. Woohoo! And then all these are normal, everyday, still living animals, except this one. What's this one? The dragon. Of course, in China they call it the long. So the year of the long. Why would they have invented this calendar with normal, actual living creatures and then throw in an imaginary creature? It doesn't really fit. I think we should be open to the idea that when this calendar was invented, millennia ago, there were still some dragons still alive back then, and they've since gone extinct. After all, the dodo has gone extinct, the carrier pigeon's gone extinct, animals go extinct. This may be the last generation that sees a white rhino. They're going to go extinct soon. Extinctions happen. Here's a Mesopotamian, say that 5 times fast. I mean, not literally. You guys will, I know. Sorry for the tongue twist. And they took this cylinder seal, which is on the left, and they would roll it out on a piece of clay, and that would leave a design. And the design shows a creature with legs that go straight down, necks that's all twisted, bent, and long tails and long necks. And that is what makes dinosaur a dinosaur, as far as it being different than other kinds of reptiles. So dinosaur reptiles had legs that went straight down right beneath their body, instead of like lizards where their legs go out and then down, like even crocodiles, like they waddle when they walk, you know. But dinosaurs, legs straight down, so they could do this. Sauropods are the long neck, long-tailed, 4 legs on the ground type of dinosaurs. Say sauropods. Just seeing if you're awake. Thousands of miles away from the Mesopotamian river valley. Is it a river? Mesopotamia anyways. And thousands of years later, in the 1400s, in a little cathedral in Carlisle, England, there's a tomb in the floor of the cathedral. We went there a few years ago to look at it, and it's Bishop Bell's tomb, and it's right in the middle of the aisle. I guess back then they thought it was good to bury their pastors right where the people could remember. This was Pastor Bob, wasn't he great? Let's walk all over him. I don't know. Different traditions for different folks, but this was a brass decoration that was a big box around his burial site, and Bishop Bell was buried there. And on this brass decoration, we've got normal animals, like I remember seeing an eel, fox, pheasant, and then this, which is worn down from years of foot traffic. By the way, they have it covered with a carpet now, so we had to ask the rector to remove the carpet, and he was very kind to do so. That's what they call their pastors, as rectors. Don't ask me. Legs that go straight down, long tail, long neck, necks that intertwine. Notice this. What do you see there? Spikes on the end of a tail. Oh, that's got to be fiction, because sauropod dinosaurs don't have spikes at the end of their tail. Oh, yes, they did. Researchers just discovered sauropods in Africa with spikes at the end of their tail just about 10 years ago. So this might be an anatomical feature that identifies it as being the real deal. You decide for yourself, look up Bishop Bell's brass behemoth. And then we have this Egyptian palette that shows something similar, legs that go straight down, long necks, and the tails don't look like they fit on the palette. But it's something to consider, especially since these are real creatures, humans, and that's a likeness of a bull. And so they knew what they were carving when they made this Narmer palette. And we have likenesses of long-necked, scaly creatures. This is a medieval castle in France called Château du Chambord, and I've never been there. Friends of mine did and took this picture, and they said, man, Brian, when I got there, they sold T-shirts that said, I saw Salamander Castle. Because these salamanders are depicted by the hundreds all over the castle in tapestries and carvings and everything else. And he said, Brian, you know salamanders, right? And I said, yeah, I've picked up a salamander or two. Do they have scales? No scales. Salamanders don't even have necks. So why they call this Salamander Castle, I don't know. I think they should just at least call it Dragon Castle, if not Dinosaur Castle, because it looks similar to me. Similarly, we see this Chateau du Blois and a Middle Ages tapestry, and it's got scales, and it shows this animal with big teeth and the little baby one. Isn't he cute? And over on the other side of the swamp scene, we see other regular swamp creatures. And then up on the high ground, you see like a deer. Anyway, look it up, Chateau du Blois, B-L-O-I-S. And you'll see, and you'd be the judge what you think these clawed creatures were depicted in these swamp scenes, castles made by men who went on hunting expeditions. Maybe those hunts were what gave rise to dragon encounters, legends of dragon encounters. And then we have the Nile Palestrine, the Palestrina. It's a scene from the Nile, and it's the mosaic of Palestrina. And you look, and there's all these details in here. You can look this up in Wikipedia, and you find that on the right side, there's this section where it's got in tile. They use little pieces of tile to make this scene. And it says in Greek something like krako, dilo, pardalis, something like that. I need to get my Greek straightened out. I never took Greek, but working on it. And it's got the natives are restless, and they're wrapping around this creature. What is this creature? And it actually, some say it looks like a dinosaur. I don't think it does. It looks more like a Triassic reptile that we know from fossils called, get this one, Gorgonopsid. Yeah. So the Gorgonopsids didn't have holes in their skulls like these guys. They had skulls that looked more like a mammal, like a mammal that's a solid skull, but it was a mammal-like, but it was a reptile. And so what better way to express that by these ancient people? This is built about the time of Christ, 2,000 years ago. Than by saying it's a crocodilo leopardalis. It's like a leopard and a crocodile smushed into one creature, and you get that. So some say, oh, that can't be an ancient. Those were extinct millions of years before man ever came around. Humans and dinosaurs couldn't possibly have lived together because dinosaurs died 65 million years ago. Did you know that's circular reasoning? We're deciding the conclusion before we reach it. That's not good science. It's not good reasoning. Let's be open to the evidence, I say. And they come up with things like, that's not a mammal-like reptile. It's a crocodile. And so I panned over and I saw crocodiles. They knew what a crocodile looked like, and that thing was not a crocodile. So, and our last one is a depiction of something. I don't know what. What do you think it is? It's got these big plates on its back. You be the judge of that one. This is in Cambodia, an ancient temple covered in jungle, Ta Prohm Temple, P-R-O-H-M. Go look it up. So these are some examples of human artifacts in history where we have clashes with dragons, human encounters with creatures that are extinct, probably extinct, but they actually resemble some very specific dinosaurs that we know from fossils, dinosaurs and other extinct mammal-like reptiles, for example. Well, I would expect this because Job lived after the flood, not too long after, but after, and he had an encounter with God, and God told him, hey, Job, look now at the behemoth which I made along with you. Day 6, creation week. God made the animals, and then he made man. So God believes in his own book, Genesis. See now, his strength is in his hips, like this creature here. The highest point in his arch-shaped body is his hips. Same with the Diplodocus. Highest point in his body is the hips. And he moves his tail like a cedar. And in a lot of our Bibles it says, Behemoth might have been, it's like the footnotes, it says, Behemoth might have been a hippopotamus. So I went to the zoo. And I looked at the hippopotamus tail, and I'm not going to give you the details on what I saw. Because this hippo climbed out of that mud hole, and he decided he would use his tail as a fertilizer distributor device. And it made a really lousy sound. Oh, man. I wish I could unsee that, but nothing about the hippo tail reminded me of a tree. Not the way it moved, not the way it looked, nothing. Let alone a cedar tree. But these sauropod and other dinosaurs with these tails that stick out, big long tails, biggest tails of any creature ever made, I think it matches what we see here described in Job chapter 40. Behemoth may have been a dinosaur, like a real clashes with dragons in the Bible itself after the flood. Again, going extinct one by one as climate changed and as people moved in. Well, I've got two final dinosaur details that I wish I knew. The last two are kind of science-y, so put on your science hats and we'll go through. Collagen decay is number 4. And we see collagen is a protein. And we actually see it in dinosaur and other animal and other fossils. Collagen is a tough protein. It's part of your skin. It's what makes your skin so tough. You ever had a fishing hook stuck in your skin? You try to get the thing out and it just won't come out. You're like, I wish my skin wasn't so tough so I could get this fishing hook out. Maybe it's just me. I'm just not coordinated with fishing, but that's what happens to me. And this stuff is tough. It lasts a long time. This is a Dead Sea Scroll, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that's 2,000 years old. And it's made of skin, basically, animal skin, and it lasted a long time. So it can last thousands of years. In fact, it can last 900,000 years if it's the collagen that you find buried inside of bone. That's what gives bone its flexibility. And there's a picture of the molecule of collagen. It shows the position of every atom. Scientists have worked this out using very clever techniques. And after 900,000 years, its shelf life is over. And it has turned into tiny little particles. So it's all gone after 900,000 years. That's its maximum lifespan. So is this older than 900,000 years? No, it's got to be younger than 900,000 years because it's still around and it's still made of collagen. And we know historically that it's only 2,000 years old, so that's no problem. But here's where we have something interesting. In this very Tyrannosaurus rex carcass, in its thigh bone, researchers found these kinds of red blood cell-like elements inside blood vessels. Blood vessels are made of collagen protein. And they even sequenced the protein that was in these things. So collagen doesn't last that long, and yet they find it over and over in all these different dinosaur and other samples. Well, here I am standing by that very replica of a hadrosaur leg, and so these scientists went back and they found a hadrosaur thigh bone. This is your thigh bone. And they cracked it open, and they dissolved the mineral part of the bone away with acid, and they found blood vessels. So collagen is still in there. And red hemoglobin is still in this carcass. You can see the remnants of its heart right there. These collagen-containing soft tissues are in Triceratops bones and others. So all this teaches us what? It teaches us that these things were deposited no more than 900,000 years ago, because that's the max shelf life for collagen. Now that's news I wish I would have had long ago, and it would have saved me a long time of worrying about how these dinosaurs fit into the creation model, fit into the Earth history. These are flood fossils. And the fact that we find soft tissues in them and proteins fits the timing of the flood at 4,500 or so years ago, not millions of years. It just doesn't make as much sense. And it fits what Jesus said in Mark 10:6, but from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Not billions of years after the Big Bang beginning, God made them male and female. No, right at the beginning, right at creation week, Jesus taught, and this is the basis for marriage. So yeah, we established that Genesis is actual history, and Jesus believed that himself. Now the last detail has to do with carbon decay, and it's just simple. Radiocarbon has an even shorter shelf life. It's a substance called radiocarbon, and it all goes away. It turns into nitrogen in 100,000 years max. Well, we found some in this hadrosaur tail vertebra. We found some in a Triceratops. We found radiocarbon in Diplodocus. We found it in Stegosaurus. We found it in, oh, this is fun to say, you try, Psittacosaurus. Psittacosaurus, Chinese fossil. We got a piece and we sent it to the lab, and sure enough, it came back with measurable amounts of radiocarbon, as though it's thousands, not millions of years old. Consistent with our finding it, and not just us, but all labs all around the world, looking for some piece of carbon that does not have radiocarbon in it so that they can zero their instruments and they can't find it. There's always some low level of measurable amounts of radiocarbon, even in coal and even in diamonds. Like, wow. So we see evidence, scientific evidence for recent creation, thousands, not millions, in collagen and in radiocarbon. And so we'll just move ahead to the main point, the big conclusion, the big finale. Jesus said this in John 3, "If I have told you of earthly things and you do not believe, how will you believe if I tell you of heavenly things?" Jesus is saying this to us tonight. Take me at my word. Trust me with Genesis. It's all true. And by the way, I'm saying to you that Jesus was right and that science backs him up. The history in Genesis is true. The creation really happened. The flood really happened. You can therefore trust all of it. And we have resources that help to remind you of that and help to build up the next generation of these things. If I were to say, get one book tonight about dinosaurs, this would be the one, Guide to Dinosaurs. It's a family-level book, color photos on every page, a little bit of everything. It does answer the question about the Ice Age. It does have information on soft tissues, and it has information on dragons. And it shows it in full color, and everyone likes to look at the pictures. We also have our own 4-episode series called Uncovering the Truth About Dinosaurs. And each episode is TV quality. So you'll see it's a box set uncovering the truth about dinosaurs. That's the one you want to get if you have a friend or family member who is like I was. You know, creation is a bunch of quack science. Well, this is the kind of material that you can show your friend and you can watch it together, and the production quality is excellent. And there's even one whole episode that talks about dragons and shows you pictures on site of dinosaur digs, and even an episode on dragons. And finally, Acts and Facts. I want to encourage you to make sure to sign up for that because it's free, and this gives you the kind of information like these dinosaur details, but it comes at you every month. That's helpful because you're not going to remember a lot of what I said tonight. What we want to do is we want to give you science that confirms your faith in Scripture, because the Bible is the Word of God and it is the truth from our truthful God to us. And so if we can confirm that in you using science, we'll do it. And listening to me talk about it once is not enough. What I really want to do is spark your interest so that you will dig in more. And the first place that I would go to dig in more is for this free resource, Acts and Facts magazine, where we tell you some new news articles every month. So you get to build a stronger and stronger foundation in creation month by month with Acts and Facts. Listen, 5 details. The first one confirms creation. Clever design. Second one was catastrophic death. It confirms the flood. Third one, clashes with dragons, confirms Job. And the last 2, collagen and carbon, radiocarbon, they confirm the timing that Jesus used. All of this confirms the Bible. And I can tell you with a straight face that science confirms Scripture. Genesis is true. It's trustworthy. And trust it. Thank you.